Welcome back to Beyond the Click podcast. Ever feel like the world is changing faster than you can keep up? You're probably right. And a huge part of that change is driven by one generation, Gen Z. On today's episode, we're not just asking, who is Gen Z? We're exploring how they're redefining everything, from the way we consume entertainment and news, to the very strategies marketers use to reach us. Gen Z's influence is undeniable. Get ready to have your assumptions challenged as we unpack the power of this generation and explore how they're reshaping the world around us.
You know how it is, right? We're bombarded by marketing everywhere we turn. But things are changing, and today we're going to deep dive into how Gen Z is changing the marketing game. It's not just about tweaking tactics. It's a whole new philosophy.
Oh, yeah, it really is. It's fascinating to watch. Gen Z, they're the first truly digital generation. They've grown up with a totally different relationship with brands. Their expectations are way higher. They can sniff out BS in a second, and they're kind of rewriting the rules of the game.
We're going to explore all of this using a recent episode of The Stream. They really got into the nitty-gritty of this whole new marketing world.
Yeah, and one of the biggest things they talked about was how TikTok is becoming the go-to source for information, not just a social platform.
This one really blew me away. Apparently 50% of Gen Z are using TikTok to search for stuff. More than Google. What's the deal with that?
It comes down to trust, really. They value real experiences, what their peers are saying, more than all that polished marketing stuff. TikTok feels more authentic, almost like getting advice from a friend,
So it's like constantly reading reviews before you buy anything. But instead of Amazon reviews, you're on TikTok.
Yeah.
It's like crowdsourced research all the time.
Exactly. And it connects directly to this rise of user-generated content. We all know it as UGC. Think about it. When was the last time some celebrity endorsement actually made you buy something?
Probably back when I believed in Santa Claus. But seriously, Gen Z, they're way more likely to trust someone like them, someone whose experience resonates.
And the stream really highlighted how it's the smaller creators who are usually closer to the average person who are gaining all this influence. They're creating content that's relatable, genuine, and not all staged.
So brands, they need to move away from those big budget, top-down campaigns, huh?
Yeah, totally. Instead of spending a fortune on celebs, they got to get creative, tap into that UGC, and encourage real engagement. It's more of a collaborative thing now.
So if you can get your audience to become your marketers, that's like winning the lottery, right?
You got it. And this goes hand in hand with another major shift, the whole community thing.
Brands are almost becoming like digital tribes, would you say?
Oh, that's a great way to put it. Gen Z really values belonging, sharing experiences. It's not just about buying stuff anymore. It's about building real relationships based on shared values.
The stream actually had this super interesting example. Apparently, Nutter Butter, the cookie, they've been doing this unhinged content, whatever that means.
Yeah, that's a perfect example of a brand taking a risk to connect with Gen Z's sense of humor. They're not afraid to poke fun at themselves, and that resonates with an audience that values keeping it real.
So it's not just about being on brand, it's about being on the same wavelengths as your audience, basically.
Exactly. And this is an interesting question for you. Think about a brand you really connect with. What makes them different? Are they building a community? Do their values align with yours? These are the questions Gen Z is asking, and it's shaping marketing for everyone.
Yeah, it's not just about selling a product. It's about being part of something bigger, something more meaningful.
For sure. And another thing Gen Z is really pushing for is diversity and inclusion.
Right. They want to see themselves reflected in the brands they support, and not just superficially either.
It's so much more than just having diverse people in ads. Gen Z looks at the company's values, what they stand for, their impact on the world.
I totally get that. Authentic inclusivity is better for everyone. It broadens their reach, brings in new perspectives, and ultimately leads to better products and services.
Absolutely. What's really interesting is that Gen Z is giving us a sneak peek into the future of how we'll all be engaging with brands.
So it's not just about marketing to teenagers. It's about the future of marketing as a whole.
Exactly. It's about moving away from those annoying ads that interrupt us and instead adding value to people's lives.
It's about building real connections, genuine relationships based on shared values and respect. But how do brands actually do that? We're going to dig into that in part 2.
So we've been talking about this whole authenticity and community thing, but how do brands actually make that shift?
Yeah, it's easy to say be more authentic, but how do you actually pull that off? Especially for these big companies with kind of old school marketing departments.
It's definitely a challenge, but it's crucial for any brand that wants to stay relevant. The stream had some really good tips on this.
Okay, Spill the tea.
Well, the first thing is really understanding your audience, like really getting them, their values, what they care about, what makes them tick.
So it's kind of like market research, but way more intense.
Exactly. You got to go beyond just demographics and get into psychographics, understanding their motivations, aspirations, even their anxieties.
And this is where all that social listening comes in, right?
Oh, absolutely. Social listening isn't just about like posting stuff on social media. It's about actively listening to what people are saying, monitoring those conversations, understanding the sentiment, and figuring out who the key influencers are.
So it's almost like you're some kind of digital anthropologist, studying your customers like a whole culture with their own language and rituals.
I love that analogy. And once you really understand your audience, you can start crafting messages and experiences that truly resonate.
So you're moving away from that like salesy vibe and actually providing real value, figuring out how you can contribute to their lives in a meaningful way.
Gen Z can spot fake stuff a mile away. They don't want to be bombarded with ads. They want to be engaged, entertained, informed.
So making content that's actually enjoyable to watch, that becomes super important.
Exactly. And that's where creativity and innovation really come in. It's about thinking outside the box, finding those new and interesting ways to connect with your audience.
Like the whole Nutter Butter thing, right? They took a risk, got a little weird, and it totally worked.
Yeah. They weren't afraid to push boundaries, and that really resonated with Gen Z's desire for authenticity and originality.
This brings up a good point, though. We're talking about experimenting, but how do brands know what risks to take? They don't want to alienate their existing customers.
Well, that's where data and analytics come in. You got to test different approaches, track your results, and see what's resonating best.
So it's this balancing act between being innovative and creative, but also data-driven and strategic.
Exactly. You use data to inform your creative decisions. You're not just throwing stuff out there hoping something sticks. You're making smart choices based on what you know about your audience.
So we've got understanding your audience, creating authentic and engaging content, being willing to experiment. What about the actual platforms themselves? Are there any that are like particularly good for reaching Gen Z?
Well, as we mentioned earlier, TikTok is huge. It's not just social media, it's a cultural phenomenon. It's where trends are born, music is discovered, and brands can really connect with Gen Z.
But it's not all TikTok, is it?
Of course not. Instagram is still a major player, especially for visual storytelling and influencer marketing.
What about YouTube? It seems like the king of video content.
Oh, absolutely. YouTube is incredible for long-form content, educational stuff, product reviews. It's a great platform for building trust and authority.
So it sounds like a multi-platform approach is key.
Definitely. Gen Z is consuming content across all these platforms, so brands need to be present where they are, speak their language.
Okay, so to recap, we've got understand your audience deeply, create authentic and engaging content, be willing to experiment, and use a multi-platform approach.
You nailed it. But there's one more crucial piece: community.
Ah, yes. Community is king, as they say. But how do you actually build a community online?
It starts with creating a space where people feel welcome, heard, and valued.
So creating that sense of belonging, a shared identity.
Exactly. And this is where user-generated content gets really powerful.
Because when people are making and sharing content about your brand, it makes them feel like they're part of something bigger.
It's all about empowering your audience to become brand advocates, co-creators, you know?
So it's not just about broadcasting your message. It's about facilitating conversations, fostering connections, and building relationships.
You got it. That's the whole point of building a community, creating a space where people can connect, not just with your brand, but with each other.
This is all super insightful. It feels like Gen Z is really raising the bar for brands, but also pushing them to be more creative, more authentic, more community-driven.
I totally agree. It's a really exciting time to be in the marketing world. We're seeing this shift towards human-centric marketing.
It's not just about selling stuff anymore. It's about building meaningful connections, shared experiences.
And as we delve deeper into the future of marketing, we'll explore how these trends are evolving and what they mean for how we all interact with brands. So let's move on to part 3, where we'll look at the impact of all these emerging technologies like augmented reality, virtual reality, even the metaverse.
We've talked a lot about authenticity and community, but I'm curious about like the role of technology in all of this. Where does something like the metaverse fit in with all this new marketing stuff?
It's funny you should mention that, actually, because the metaverse and things like augmented reality, they're going to totally change how we interact with brands.
So it's not just seeing an ad on a screen anymore. It's like stepping into a whole virtual world where we can engage with brands on a different level.
Exactly. Imagine like going to a virtual concert that's sponsored by your favorite brand, or you could take a virtual tour of a factory, see how your clothes are made. Those are just a couple of ways the metaverse could totally revolutionize marketing.
But how does that tie into Gen Z's whole authenticity thing? It seems like tech could easily be used to create experiences that just feel, I don't know, fake.
That's the tricky part for brands. It won't be enough to just create some flashy virtual experience. They'll have to make sure it feels real, personalized and relevant to what Gen Z cares about.
So it's not just about the tech itself, it's about how it's used to make those meaningful connections.
Exactly. And that's where data and AI come in. By understanding what people like and how they behave, brands can create super personalized experiences that are tailored to each person.
That's like having a personal shopper for every brand you interact with. That sounds kind of cool, but are there ethical concerns with all that?
Oh, for sure. The more data brands collect about us, the more important it is that they use it responsibly. Transparency, privacy, data security, that's all crucial.
It's like this balance between personalization and privacy. You want things to be tailored to you, but you don't want to feel like you're being watched all the time.
Yeah, I get that. Ultimately, it comes down to trust. If Gen Z doesn't trust a brand, they're not going to engage with it, no matter how cool the tech is.
So it's not about chasing the latest trends. It's about building those genuine relationships based on shared values, respect. And that's true whether we're interacting with brands in the real world or in the metaverse.
Well said. Think about the marketing you see every day. Does it feel authentic? Do you feel like you're part of a community? If not, what would it take to change that?
Those are great questions. I think this whole conversation has really shown us that marketing isn't just about selling anymore. It's about creating value, building connections, making things better for everyone.
I couldn't agree more. It's a really exciting time to be a consumer, and an even more exciting time to be a marketer who's willing to embrace the challenges and opportunities ahead.
And that brings us to the end of our deep dive into Gen Z and the future of marketing. But the conversation doesn't have to end here. Keep thinking about these ideas, how they apply to your own life, your own interactions with brands.
Who knows, maybe you'll be the one to come up with the next big idea that changes the whole marketing world.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep diving deep.